Overnight panic in the streets of London. Chaos and carnage strike a summer Saturday night. A deadly terrorist attack carried out in 2 locations.
There was a police car, and the sirens going off everywhere.
The assault began shortly after 10 o'clock London time. A white van driving on the London Bridge swerves, leaves the roadway, and starts plowing into pedestrians.
We heard a crash almost.
A loud noise.
A lot of loud noises.
That van coming to a stop just past the end of London Bridge, steps away from the bustling Borough Market. Police say at least 3 men leave the van and race toward the area. Armed with long blades, they start slashing and stabbing people indiscriminately. Witnesses say the attackers were shouting, "This is for Allah."
I just saw suddenly loads of people run away from the market, and there was people lying on the ground.
And they run up, they stabbed this girl, I don't know how many times, 10 times, maybe 15 times.
Get away! Eyewitnesses to the horrifying events describing the panic as Londoners scrambled to safety.
So we didn't know where the shooting was coming from, so we all just lay down on the floor of the cab.
Would you please leave the area for your own safety?
Terrified crowds hustled to safety, told by police to keep their hands on their heads. Officers swarming the scene, pinning down the attackers, and then in a hail of gunfire, the Metropolitan Police shoot and kill all 3 male suspects within 8 minutes of that first call. The assailants were wearing a hoax suicide belt. 7 innocent people left dead, another 48 badly injured, including a police officer.
Police believe all the attackers were killed, but investigations are underway to ensure there are no more. All this took place at a time when the terror level in the UK had been reduced to severe from critical, meaning an attack was thought highly likely, although there was no knowledge of an imminent threat.
This is, as we all know, the 3rd terrorist attack Britain has experienced in the last 3 months. And at the same time, the security and intelligence agencies and police have disrupted 5 credible plots since the Westminster attack in March. They are bound together by the single evil ideology of Islamist extremism that preaches hatred, sows division, and promotes sectarianism. It is an ideology that claims our Western values of freedom, democracy, and human rights are incompatible with the religion of Islam. It is an ideology that is a perversion of Islam and a perversion of the truth.
Want words to describe the grief and anger that our city will be feeling today. I'm appalled and furious.
As the UK welcomed a new day with a raised level of fear and awareness after a Sunday evening terrorist attack on the London Bridge, U.S. President Donald Trump took to Twitter in what has become his signature brand, tweeting exactly what's on his mind, and blasted London's mayor. President Trump extended his sentiments, calling out Mayor Sadiq Khan for telling Londoners there's no reason to be alarmed. Trump tweeted, "At least 7 dead and 48 wounded in terror attack, and Mayor of London says there is no reason to be alarmed." In another tweet, the president used the tragic events in London to appeal to the world as to why his controversial travel ban, which has been repeatedly blocked by several courts, is now more necessary than ever, tweeting, "We need the travel ban as an extra layer of security."
There can be no justification for the acts of these terrorists, and I'm quite clear that we will never let them win, nor will we allow them to cower our city or Londoners.
German authorities allowed a popular rock festival to resume Saturday after a terrorism scare. Some people with some suspected links to Islamic extremism were spotted, prompting officials to curb the festival's opening night. They said searches of the site turned up no suspicious objects. Koblenz police chief Wolfgang Fromm told a news conference at least one person of non-German origin on which there was police information in the area of terrorism had access to secure areas at the event.
Fears of potential attacks are so high in Europe at the moment that a false alarm ended in a mass stampede in the Italian city of Turin. Panic gripped a crowd watching a screening of the Champions League final when a firecracker was mistaken for a gunshot or explosion. Italian media reporting over 1,000 people were injured in the resulting stampede, 7 of them severely, including a 7-year-old boy. Witnesses describe what happened.
We heard the sound of a bang, and then people began pushing us towards the arcades. People were falling over, and someone trampled over us. I was lucky, and so were my friends.
At a certain point, a gap was created in the middle of the crowd. We surged forward and we saw people jumping over fences, but we didn't realize what was happening.
We asked award-winning journalist Martin Jay whether the authorities in Europe can still convince people that they are safe.
We've never lived in a period in Britain or in the European Union where governance has been so low and so lame. You know, we don't have dynamic, bold leaders anymore, positive, confident political apparatus of people who are confident about winning the next term, the next political election. I think that plays a big part of this. You know, leaders across Europe are afraid to crack down on anti-terrorism measures and to scare people. So I think that's part of it.
NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said on Sunday, President Donald Trump is absolutely committed to NATO despite his past comments disparaging the alliance. Stoltenberg said on CBS's Face the Nation, he has, in meetings with me and publicly when I met him in the White House last month, stated that he's committed to NATO. His security team has also stated that very clearly. During his presidential campaign, Trump called NATO obsolete, but after meeting with Stoltenberg in April, Trump said he changed his views. The about-face came after NATO's leaders assured him the group would turn its attention to combating terror groups such as ISIS.
North Korea has officially responded to the latest UN sanctions against it, saying it will continue its nuclear weapons development. North Korea's foreign ministry spokesman said in a statement broadcasted by the country's official news agency, the sanctions resolution is a crafty, hostile act with the purpose of putting a curb on North Korea's buildup of nuclear forces, disarming it, and causing economic suffocation to it. The country has rejected all UN Security Council resolutions since 2006, when it conducted its first nuclear test. The U.S. has made the issue a security priority after Pyongyang vowed to develop a nuclear-tipped missile capable of hitting the U.S.
North Korea claims it now has the ability to strike the United States using its latest intermediate-range ballistic missile. That's according to the North state-run newspaper, the Nodong Shinmun. The Workers' Party official Daily reported Sunday that the Hwasong-12 missile tested on May 14 was fired at the highest angle and that it reached the maximum altitude of more than 2,100 kilometers before landing in the East Sea, some 787 kilometers away. Meaning at a normal launch angle, it could fly 4,500 kilometers, enough to reach America's military base over in Guam. Normally, Pyongyang is full of bark and little bite, but many analysts agree the Hwasong-12 breakthrough is the first step towards developing an ICBM capable of striking the U.S. mainland. Experts warn the rogue state likely used a missile engine from countries like Ukraine or Russia and may have access to other, more advanced engines.
Naval maneuvers led by 2 U.S. aircraft carriers and 2 Japanese vessels have ended. A senior advisor to the U.S. Secretary of Defense said the exercises were intended to reassure allies and to keep U.S. forces ready for any crisis. The Carl Vinson will head back to its home port in San Diego, but the Ronald Reagan will remain. Japanese media reported the USS Nimitz aircraft carrier left its base on Thursday and is heading to the West Pacific to replace the Carl Vinson. It is also reported that U.S. officials said all 3 aircraft carriers will not be deployed around the Korean Peninsula at the same time.
According to Reuters on Sunday, Syrian militias announced having made a significant gain towards overtaking a major dam on the Euphrates River from the Islamic State. As the U.S.-backed militias push towards Raqqa City, forces that include an alliance of Kurdish and Arab fighters reportedly captured the Bath Dam and have renamed the dam Freedom Dam. A spokesman for the Kurdish YPG militia, the SDF's key component, said fighters have been surveying villages close to the vicinity of the dam looking for mines and shoring up their defensive lines. The spokesman also reported that the dam has been completely liberated.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says he may order a new military onslaught against Kurdish fighters in Syria if they attack Turkey. Erdogan was referring to the Kurdish YPG group, which he says is directly linked to the outlawed PKK in Turkey. His comments came after Turkish media said the United States was resupplying the PKK and YPG in Syria. Last month, U.S. President Donald Trump angered Turkey when he authorized the Pentagon to provide weapons to the YPG, in addition to the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, to fight Islamic State.
Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei lashed out on Sunday against U.S. President Donald Trump and Saudi Arabia's leaders. He thinks their new regional alliance against Tehran will bear no fruit. During Trump's visit to Riyadh, the U.S. sealed a $110 billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia, which is Iran's regional arch-rival. Trump has signaled out Iran as a key source of funding and support for militant groups during his visit to Saudi Arabia in late May. The trip came 2 days after the Iranian election, where pragmatist President Hassan Rouhani won a second term.
Despite being gripped by disease, war, and famine, Yemen is blocking reporters and aid workers from entering. Forces loyal to Yemen's former president have been fighting supporters of its current leader since 2015. There have been more than 12,000 civilian casualties since the war began. United Nations officials said the current regime, backed by Saudi Arabia, is stifling incoming deliveries of food and supplies, but they say Houthi rebels are also blocking medical supplies. The restrictions have made it tough to deal with a cholera outbreak. The UN says there could be up to 130,000 cases in a matter of weeks, and more than 17 million people are reportedly struggling to get enough to eat because of the blockages. Nearly 7 million more are, quote, one step from famine, a UN official said. Sometimes called the Forgotten War, Yemen's conflict hasn't gotten as much international attention as the unrest in Syria. Covering the country's struggles is difficult because foreign reporters face restrictions and local journalists are reportedly arrested frequently.
Inside a private nursing home in Venezuela, scenes of loneliness and neglect. In the midst of Venezuela's economic meltdown, elderly people are some of the country's most vulnerable. These residents' twilight years are filled with worry.
Here there's a shortage of everything: toiletries, soap, cream, medicine. The doctor rarely comes, and when he does, he doesn't bring a single pill.
Inside the home's infirmary, the shelves are practically bare. Chronic shortages across the country have hit residents here particularly hard. Without proper treatment, Victor Romero's skin cancer continues to spread.
It stings, it hurts. It's like a candle burning inside me. When you get sick in here, you just wait for the Lord to take you.
A recent study found that senior citizens in one part of Venezuela are losing around 1.3 kilograms of weight per month.
This pantry here used to be full. We couldn't actually move around inside. It was that full. But because of the situation, many shops have closed and the donations have stopped.
Volunteers are stepping up to fill the void left by government and private businesses. Rosalinda Gari delivers clothes, food, and whatever else she can collect.
Social media is the best way to reach people, to encourage them to donate not just food, but cooking gas or anything else the elderly could use.
Every day, hundreds of educated young people leave Venezuela looking for opportunities abroad. But this loss of skilled labor is a major blow to the economy and those who are left behind. In times of crisis, the weakest often suffer the most. In many Venezuelan nursing homes, that means closing the door on hope.
It's been 2 months since João Claudio Rosa's brother was killed in the Complexo do Alemão, one of the most violent slums in Rio de Janeiro. Claudio blames the military police.
My brother was a worker at a cleaning company and used to get up every day at 3 a.m. and come home only at 7 p.m. He got home and then left again to buy some bread. This is my brother's work t-shirt. A few seconds after he had left the bakery, the cops started to shoot.
The day we visited the area, the police were hunting down drug traffickers, forcing terrified residents to hide. In 2011, the government tried to pacify people living in slums like this one by increasing the presence of the police and improving basic services. But community leader Marco Valerio Alvia says the authorities never completed the work that was needed.
At the beginning of the pacification process 3 years ago, there were social projects that no longer exist because of the permanent violence. Now our kids are sick and stressed. Schools are invaded by violence. Unemployment grows and there are no investments for infrastructure anymore.
So drug gangs, including Comando Vermelho or the Red Command, are battling for control and resisting any advance by the police. At least 14 people have died here in just a few months.
People here say that this place is like a war zone with fighting between drug gangs and the police happening every day. 2 months ago, the police was able to set up this post. You're able to see the weapon right next to that window. Those living here say that they're more fearful than before.
A law signed by Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam will take effect June 1st and will force Nashville to let people carry loaded guns on a school bus hub. The law has officials in the state's large cities fearing for children's lives. However, Republican state lawmakers said the law enables people to properly defend themselves. Both groups point to the same crime to prove their point, which was a shooting at the bus hub last year that wounded 4 teenagers, sending middle schoolers and other travelers scrambling for cover.
Chicago was the only one of the top 20 largest cities in the U.S. that's population dropped last year. Newly released data from the U.S. Census Bureau shows Chicago's population fell by over 8,600 residents in 2016. That's nearly twice as many as the year before. Chicago's population has now fallen 3 years in a row. Many of Chicago's black neighborhoods are seeing the sharpest declines in population. The Chicago Tribune says many of the city's black residents are leaving to live in safer, more prosperous areas. U.S. Census Bureau data from December shows the state of Illinois also lost more than 37,500 residents in 2016. That's more than any other state. Texas's population, on the other hand, is growing. 5 of the 15 fastest growing large cities in the U.S. are in Texas, and the Chicago Tribune says that's where many Chicagoans are shown to be heading.
MEPs misspent almost €40 million allocated each year for their national offices. That's the claim of an alarming report presented by a group of journalists. It reveals some of the politicians pay to rent homes they already own or simply have ghost offices.
Some people spend so much time with their laptop they may as well be married to it. Just don't try to perform the ceremony in Utah. The state's Attorney General's office this week said there is no constitutional right to marry a computer, much to Chris Sevier's chagrin. In a lawsuit against the state of Utah, the 40-year-old essentially likened same-sex marriage to a legal union between a human and an inanimate object. Plaintiffs contend that because the courts have recognized same-sex individuals' right to marry, this court should further expand the right to marry to include unions between person and a laptop computer and unions between multiple partners. Sevier's endgame, according to the document, is for the U.S. Supreme Court to reverse its landmark 2015 ruling that legalized gay marriage throughout the country. By throwing a tantrum and trying to espouse a machine, Sevier believes he can convince the High Court to return to its primitive limited definition of marriage as being between one man and one woman.
Sea turtles on the Great Barrier Reef are ingesting a bunch of harmful chemicals, and it's mostly because of humans. Researchers tested the blood of green turtles living in urban and remote areas along the reef. In the samples, they found indicators for hundreds of thousands of chemicals ranging from kidney and heart medication to stuff used in pesticides, industrial products, and cosmetics. The blood samples also contained more unidentifiable chemicals than identifiable ones. Chemical pollution like this has been linked to liver disease and inflammation in sea turtles, as well as damage to their eyes, flippers, and other internal organs. Last year, turtles living on the Great Barrier Reef suffered an outbreak of fibropapillomatosis, a type of herpes. Green sea turtles are currently classified as endangered. On the plus side, the research team thinks the turtles can be used to monitor the overall health of marine life in the area.
A terrifying scene for people northeast of Calgary after a tornado ripped through the area. Residents in Three Hills snapped shots of the twister as it passed through Friday evening. And my next guest captured the time-lapse video that you see right now. Vance Newdorf was driving home when he noticed the tornado rolling in.